Has Syracuse basketball done enough this offseason? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, Syracuse basketball has 10 of its 13 roster spots filled up. Have the Orange done enough already, even though Syracuse can still improve its roster? Have they done enough? We're going to break it all down, what they have done so far this offseason, what Syracuse still needs, and an early grade on Syracuse basketball's offseason so far. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, so before we get into what Syracuse has done so far this offseason, basketball, of course, here's the roster. They have 10 players so far. The guards are Jaquan Carlos, J.J. Starling, Chance Westry, Elijah Moore, Kyle Cuff. The forwards are Donnie Freeman, Chris Bell, and Jyare Davis. And the centers are Eddie Lampkin and Naheem McLeod. So they still have 3 open scholarships remaining. Currently, On3 has them as the 12th best commit class in the country, which is 3rd in the ACC. So that's nothing to sneeze at by any means. 12th in the country, obviously. And they have 5 commits, those being Donnie Freeman, Elijah Moore, Eddie Lampkin, Jyare Davis, and Jaquan Carlos. So 5 commits for Syracuse basketball so far this offseason. What have they done? And have they done enough? They have brought in size, rebounding, center, whatever you want to call it. They have upgraded that part of the roster. I talked about in the very beginning of the offseason, what does Syracuse basketball need? It was published, I believe, in late March. It was back when I was not in Syracuse at that time. And I said they need size, rebounding, center. You guys on a poll Friday said that that was the biggest need for Syracuse basketball this offseason. I believe they have already accomplished that. First of all, they brought in Eddie Lampkin, who is a 6'11" center from Colorado. He averaged 10 points and 7 rebounds last season. He is a starting caliber center, and he should be a steady presence next season. He's not as good as what they've had maybe in the past with Jesse Edwards, for example, but a starting caliber ACC center that can definitely rebound. So Syracuse has done enough in that regard with bringing in a center. And again, I'm going to address the Eddie Lampkin rumors on here. I've done it numerous times. I left a pinned comment on the last podcast. Until there's anything official with Eddie Lampkin in terms of him maybe decommitting and all that stuff, I'm going to assume that Eddie Lampkin is on the roster next season. So that is why I keep talking about him like he's on the roster, because he is on the roster until anything actually changes. You guys all understand that? Cool. We're good. Let's move on. They've also brought in Donnie Freeman, who is the number 6 overall recruit in the country heading into next season, a 6'9" power forward. He averaged over 8 rebounds per game in the EYBL, which is one of the top high school leagues out there. And that was second in the entire league, only behind Maryland 5-star recruit Derek Queen, who Syracuse will probably see this season. They are scheduled to play at some point next year in Maryland and Syracuse in a non-conference game. Whether Derek Queen actually plays or not, well, he should be playing, bottom line. But I can't say that he will definitely be playing just because injuries and stuff can happen. But you get the idea. He was second in his high school league in rebounding, and he is 6'9", so he has that size as well. Those two alone, you could have said, is probably good enough. With the size, the rebounding, you did get a true center in Eddie Lampkin. But then the team also brought in Jyare Davis from Delaware, who is 6'7", which is not the tallest player in the world, but 6'7" is still pretty solid size for someone that can play the 3 and a little bit of the 4 as well. He is a forward from Delaware, but last year he averaged 17 points and 8 rebounds per game. 8 rebounds per game from Jyare Davis. He is a tenacious rebounder, if you will. Okay, so he's going to help solve that problem. He can play the 3 or the 4, like I mentioned. He's not a great shooter, which we'll get into on the next segment. But the rebounding total, 8 rebounds per game, says that he is a very, very solid rebounder, and Syracuse is going to really like him for next season. So to recap, what has Syracuse done well so far in the offseason? Have they done enough? I don't think they've done enough, but what they have done really well is addressing what many believed, including you guys, majority of you guys believed. The biggest need was size, rebounding / true center, and the Orange have accomplished that with 3 additions, 2 in the transfer portal, 1 in high school. Eddie Lampkin, a near 7-foot center, had 7 rebounds per game at Colorado last year, which is a Power 5 program. He was a beast in the NCAA tournament. Solid rebounder. We've talked about Eddie Lampkin a lot on this podcast. Donnie Freeman, 6'9", a power forward, number 6 overall recruit in the country. And I remember way back when I recorded that podcast and Donnie Freeman was committed to Syracuse, right? But he was the only one on this list that really was the size factor. And then, of course, there's Jyare Davis, who I just talked about, 8 rebounds per game at Delaware. I know it's Delaware, but still, he's a very, very solid rebounder. He can also score. Talked a lot about what his role will be over these last couple of podcasts. But the point being is that Syracuse basketball has addressed the need for size, rebounding, and the center. And I cannot understate enough how important that is because Syracuse has been a very poor rebounding team in the past. And I'm looking forward to next year, hopefully them being at least middle of the road in the ACC, if not in the top 5 in the ACC in rebounding margin. So Syracuse has done enough, bringing in size, bringing in rebounding, bringing in a true starting caliber center. But I don't think Syracuse basketball has done enough this offseason. And we're going to discuss all that and more on the next segment. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and Gametime is what you should use to buy tickets. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets, and some of you guys might be New York Knicks fans, and you can use Gametime to buy tickets to attend a home or road playoff game against the Indiana Pacers. Of course, if the Knicks win Game 6 against Indiana, then there won't be a Game 7, and then you can purchase your tickets for the Eastern Conference Finals. But anyways, all you got to do is just go on the Gametime app and search up Knicks tickets. My favorite part is I get to see the view from my seat before I buy, get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the streaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and on today's episode, we're going over Syracuse basketball's offseason to date and whether the Orange have done enough. They have 10 players currently on their roster. 13 are allowed to have scholarships. So if you just do the math, Syracuse is allowed to have 3 more scholarship players on their team. Okay, we're all clear with that. Cool. We talked about what Syracuse has done well so far, which is bringing in size, rebounding, and a true center. They have accomplished those needs with Eddie Lampkin, Donnie Freeman, and Jyare Davis. Obviously, Lampkin is the true center. Donnie and Jyare are small forward, power forward players who can really rebound the ball well. So now, has Syracuse really done enough? The answer is, to me, and probably to most of you, no. They probably have not done enough in your eyes. And they haven't done enough in mine either. We agree. So, if you recall, over a month and a half ago, when I was saying, what I think Syracuse needs this offseason, I mentioned at the top that they needed rebounding and they got that, but they needed more shooting. Because shooting is the ultimate equalizer in basketball. It's really the reason why it seems like a lot more upsets in the tournament than there have been in the past. It's why, even though NIL is such a big factor in how a team does, on any given night, anyone could lose based on shooting. 3-point shooting. Right? I always have brought it up with Oakland and Kentucky. Kentucky, you think they don't have more NIL money than Oakland? Really? But Kentucky lost in the tournament because, well, someone from Oakland got hot from 3, and the rest is history, right? So did Syracuse bring in enough shooting? I don't think they have. Now, it is important to note that the Orange did retain Chris Bell, who shot over 40% from 3 last season, and that does help. There was the possibility of Chris Bell entering the transfer portal, just like there was a possibility for anyone to enter the transfer portal. No player is safe. No player feels safe on the roster. You can always think that someone might stay and then they leave. You just never know. So the fact that Syracuse did retain Chris Bell is a positive sign in helping the 3-point shooting. But if you look at Syracuse's additions this offseason, where's the shooting? They brought in Jaquan Carlos, who is a 6-foot point guard from Hofstra, and we know he can pass really well. We know that he is a true floor general who averaged over 6 assists per game, which led his league. He was 34% from 3, which is pretty good. It's not bad. All right, let's call it that. It's not bad, 34%. You'll take 34%. If Jaquan Carlos shoots that next season, we'll be very, very happy, right? But that was the best 3-point shooter that they brought in. He's the best one that they brought in. I know it's kind of weird to believe, right? And I know there might be some pushback. Let me get to it. Trust me, I have every single player listed over here. Jyare Davis, last year, averaged 17 points, 8 rebounds, and he's very good at creating his own shot, getting to the rim. He's good in the mid-range. He can't shoot the 3 ball. The last 2 years, he has been 26% from the 3-point line. Jyare Davis, a small forward from Delaware. 2 years ago, he was 26% from 3, and this past year, he was 26% from 3. So he is consistent. He's just not good. He is consistently bad at shooting the 3 ball. Right? Then there's Donnie Freeman, who has been built up as this player. If you talk to scouts, and we had On3 senior recruiting analyst Jamie Shaw on, talked about Donnie Freeman and that he can score at all 3 levels. And he was 2 for 4 in the McDonald's All-American game from 3. And he had that buzzer beater at the end of the 3rd quarter in that game, which was pretty cool. But can he shoot at the Division I level from 3-point range? I have no doubt that he is going to make a significant impact next season. The question is, how much does he actually bring to the team, right? I know he's going to play a big role just from the past number 6 overall recruits in the country. Just based on his ranking, all of those guys, for the most part, had significant roles in their freshman seasons. Most of them were one and done too, right? I documented that with Donnie Freeman. But is he going to do everything well next season? Is he going to come in as a perfect all-around player that can also shoot the 3 ball? Hopefully he does. Hopefully he's an all-American caliber player, but you can't bank on that, right? So there is the question with the shooting there. And then there's Elijah Moore, who is the 4-star recruit that they brought in, and he's said to be a sniper. But his role is primarily going to be dependent on whether he's actually hitting his shot or not. I compared him a couple podcasts ago to Justin Taylor and how Justin Taylor carved out 17 minutes a night because he was 39% from 3 in his freshman season. And I know it didn't work out for Justin Taylor in the end, but that was the comparison I had for a kind of low-end 4-star recruit who ends up carving out a role because he can shoot the 3 ball. If Elijah Moore can shoot the 3 ball next season for Syracuse at a high clip, then they honestly probably have done enough with shooting. Let's just be honest. They probably have done enough in that regard if he can shoot the 3 ball effectively. I just don't know if he can right away. That's the problem. That's why I say that Jaquan Carlos is the best shooter that they brought in, because he's the only one that's really proven. And Eddie Lampkin, by the way, I wrote this down. Eddie Lampkin has never attempted a 3-pointer in his 4 years in college basketball. You can go look it up. He is 0 for 0. So he is not a good 3-point shooter if he doesn't even have that thought of taking a 3. Jaquan Carlos is the best 3-point shooter they brought in. To me, that's not good enough. You need to bring in someone who is proven that can shoot from deep. They have to do that in order to address that need. So Syracuse, they have gotten the rebounding, the size, the center. They did that. They did an effective job covering that, but they have not done a good job addressing the problem with shooting, even though that they did retain Chris Bell. Now coming up, an early grade for Syracuse basketball's offseason because, hey, guess what? It's not done. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. And Syracuse football fans, I know there's a lot of optimism with you guys. And, well, you can just go to FanDuel right now and bet on the Orange to win the ACC at plus 4,500 if you're really that confident in Syracuse football. And, well, I'm not one of the folks who maybe has Syracuse winning 10 games, but if you are, this is the bet that I suggest you taking because it is at plus 4,500, and you do probably have to win over at least 10 games to win the conference outright. So why not take a shot if you are one of those people having Syracuse win over 10 games? Syracuse to win the ACC at plus 4,500 right now on FanDuel. All you got to do is just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and we're going over if Syracuse basketball has done enough so far this offseason. I told you in the top that Syracuse has done a great job addressing the fact that they needed size, a rebounding true center. They got all of that with Eddie Lampkin, Donnie Freeman, and Jyare Davis, so they addressed that problem, and Syracuse should be a better rebounding team next season. They have not done an adequate job addressing the need for three-point shooting. They just need more of it. It was one of the big needs this offseason, and I told you guys that Jaquan Carlos is the best three-point shooter that they brought in at 34% because he's the only one who's somewhat proven that can kind of do it. And the reason why I say somewhat proven kinda is because he did it at Hofstra. Can he do it in the ACC? So now it's time to give an early grade for Syracuse basketball so far this offseason. And the grade I'm about to give serves as a baseline because when all is said and done, there will come a point where Syracuse basketball, we will know officially, is done adding to its team. We'll know, maybe there won't be an announcement, but we'll just have a feeling that it's done, right? Remember last year when, I believe it was Kyle Cuff was the last transfer portal commit. That was when we kind of knew that the roster had been filled out. And then Judah Mintz came back. I don't remember the exact order, but there was a brief moment in time. There was a moment in time where we knew that the season or that the offseason was done for Syracuse basketball. And so I will be doing a full podcast eventually, giving everyone a grade for Syracuse basketball this offseason, but this is an early one. So I call it an early one because it's not finished yet, in my opinion. So this serves as a baseline, and I don't think I'm going to move it down at all. It's a baseline grade. I'm going to give it a B. I'm going to give Syracuse basketball so far this offseason a B grade because they did address the number one need that they had to address. I thought it was the number one need being size, rebounding, a true center. And you guys thought that too on the poll Friday that I released. It was a close vote, but they did address the number one need. They got Eddie Lampkin. Hopefully that stays, right? They got Donnie Freeman. And Donnie Freeman was committed at the time when I said what are the biggest needs. And it's important to note that they hung on to Donnie Freeman, right? You see a ton of times where players commit to a school from high school and then they decommit. It happens a lot more frequently in high school than it does in college in terms of the transfer portal, but it does happen. So they held on to Donnie Freeman. They held on to Elijah Moore, who's a three-point shooter. Forget that. They did hold on to Elijah Moore as a three-point shooter, but that doesn't necessarily address the size and the rebounding. But regardless, they held on to their high school recruits. They got in Jyare Davis as well. So huge high marks for the fact that they did address the number one need. However, the shooting, right? I talked about it. The shooting, not enough. Not enough proven shooting out there. I would love Syracuse to go out and get Noah Waterman because he's 6'11 and can shoot 37% from three. That's what he did last year at BYU, which is a Power 5 program and tons of flexibility if you were able to get a guy like him who's from somewhere. He's from Savannah, New York, which is not far from Syracuse. They have not done enough addressing the shooting. And really, when I look at the roster, they are one more impactful player away. Not from a national championship, but from, I can say with 100% confidence, they're going to make the tournament. I'm pretty confident they're going to make it next year. But if they get one more impactful player, I'll be even more confident, so to speak. I think a lot of people are panicking about this offseason, and I don't really see why. They do have a really top recruiting class, 12th overall in the country. They have not necessarily addressed the shooting as much as I would have liked. There's still options out there. Just one more impactful player away from me for Syracuse basketball. I would have loved if Dakota LeFew had committed to Syracuse because it would have been basically done at that point. They would have been set in stone, but they're not. I know that Syracuse has been radio silent in recent weeks. We haven't been able to really get much in terms of what they're doing or if they're doing anything. And I choose to believe that they are working just behind the scenes. I don't think they're just done adding because they can add. They still got 3 open scholarships remaining. I give them a B for this offseason for now, and we'll see maybe in a couple months whether that changes. But for now, it's a B. Now, as far as what's coming up later in the podcast, of course, there is Poll Friday tomorrow at 6 p.m., where I asked you guys this week's question: how many wins will Syracuse basketball have next year. And I gave you guys 4 options. I believe by now the poll will be closed on Twitter. If not, then feel free to vote. It's pinned on my Twitter at @LO_Syracuse. If for whatever reason it is already done and you can't vote anymore, I forgot when I set it to end, then you can still go to my YouTube and go to the community page and you can vote there. The question is over there and you can just hit the button. How many wins do you think Syracuse basketball will have next season? I will give you my answer on there. And then, of course, on Saturday at 12 o'clock, segment of the week. I still got to pick a segment, but I got 5 episodes to choose from to pick one segment to post. So stay tuned for that as well. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you know right away when I'm dropping the next podcast. And everyone, take care.